If I stand here and ask you a binary question like, is this bill constitutional? You can answer in a single word, yes or no. That tells me whether you know the fact, but it does not tell me whether you understand the reasoning, the precedent, or the broader implications. If I were grading that, I'd assess accuracy. Now, if I turn the same issue into an open question, such as, how would you determine whether this bill is constitutional? Suddenly, the answer is no longer a single word. You have to explain your thinking, cite sources, and walk me through the process. That gives me a much fuller picture of your understanding. It shows me how you apply concepts, how well you organize your ideas, and whether you can communicate your reasoning clearly. When I talk to my class, I often remind them that the way I frame a question is the way I shape the answer, and ultimately the way I evaluate it.
There are three main areas that I consider when listening to answers to my questions. First, did they answer the question appropriately? Second, did they support their position with facts? Lastly, did they take responsibility for inaction or praise those for the action taken? So when I grade responses in my classes, the question's wording sets the stage. A narrow question measures whether you know the right answer. An open question measures how deeply you understand the material, how effectively you can apply it, and whether you can defend your position. The better the framing, the more you reveal, and the more opportunity you have to earn a higher grade. It is the same principle Congress uses in hearings. The structure of the question determines whether they get a soundbite or a detailed explanation. And just like Congress, I choose my question type depending on the kind of insight I want from my students. When I speak to an audience, I often point out that how someone answers a question can be just as revealing as the answer itself, especially when they don't answer it directly. If I ask a clearly defined question and the response veers off into unrelated details, vague statements, or generic talking points, it can signal avoidance, sometimes deliberate, sometimes accidental, but always revealing. In my classroom, if a student responds to, how would you improve network security in this scenario? By giving me a general history of cybersecurity instead, they fail to demonstrate the targeted skill I am evaluating. In grading, that costs points. In public settings like congressional hearings, avoidance is even more telling. A witness asked, do you support this bill? The witness who answers, I believe we need to focus on the broader challenges facing our nation, has not responded to the question. That avoidance can undermine trust and raise doubts about transparency. When I speak to an audience, I like to illustrate how the type of question I ask, binary or open, not only shapes the answer, but also exposes whether someone is being direct or avoiding the issue. If I ask a binary question, such as, do you support this bill? The answer should be a simple yes or no. If the person instead responds with, I believe we need to focus on the broader challenges facing our nation, they have not answered the question. In that moment, the avoidance is obvious. They were given a clear choice, but sidestepped it, which can signal they are unwilling to take a position, lack the knowledge to commit, or are strategically deflecting to avoid political or reputational consequences. Now, if I shift to an open question, how would you address the issues raised in this bill? The expectation changes. Here, a one word answer would be incomplete and would also signal avoidance, but in a different way. An open question demands explanation, evidence, and reasoning. If the person gives only vague statements like, we're working on solutions, that brevity reveals a lack of depth or a deliberate attempt to avoid going on record with specifics. I see the same pattern in my classroom. If I ask a student, is encryption used in this network? And they do not provide a simple yes or no, they are avoiding a direct factual confirmation. If I ask, how would you implement encryption in this network? And they respond with a generic history of cybersecurity, they are avoiding the applied analysis I am actually grading. In both binary and open formats, failure to answer the question directly tells me more than the words spoken. It shifts my attention from the content of the answer to the reason for the avoidance. And in grading or in public hearings, that shift can be far more revealing than the original question itself. Let us look at this conversation. Speaker 1. Have you ever tried a jury trial? Speaker 2, I have not. Speaker 1, civil. Speaker 2, no. Speaker 1, criminal. Speaker 2, no. The question, have you ever tried a jury trial, was a solid binary question, and the responses were appropriate to the question.
Yes.
Can you tell me what the Dober standard is?
Senator Kennedy, I don't have that readily at my disposal, but I would be happy to take a closer look at that.
Okay.
That is not something that I've had to contend with.
Do you know what a motion in limine is?
Yes, I haven't. Again, my background is not in litigation as when I was replying to Chairman Grassley. I haven't had to, again, do a deep dive, and I understand, and I appreciate this line of questioning. I understand the challenge that would be ahead of me if I were fortunate enough to become a district court judge. I understand that that the path that many successful district court judges have taken has been a different one than I have taken. But as I mentioned in my earlier answer, I believe that the path that I have taken to be one who's been in a decision-making role on, I would guess now, somewhere between 1,500 and 2,000 enforcement matters, overseeing I don't know how many cases in federal court the
Yes.
commission has been a party to during my time.
Yes, sir. I've read.
It's not just about what you ask, it's how you ask it. Do you support this bill is binary. How would you address the issues in this bill is open. Same topic, totally different cognitive demand. One checks for position, the other invites reasoning. That's the foundation of meaningful dialogue. But here's where it gets tricky. Some questions sound binary, like, can you tell me what the Dauber standard is? Yet they're structurally open. They masquerade as yes, no, but what they really demand is depth. That deception isn't accidental. It's a linguistic sleight of hand that tests not just what someone knows, but how they express it. In the realm of civic discourse, the structure of a question is not merely a linguistic choice, it is a strategic act that shapes the nature of the response. Whether binary, open-ended, or rhetorically disguised, the way a question is framed determines not only what kind of answer is possible, but also what kind of truth is accessible. In legislative settings, media interviews, and public debate, precision in questioning is as vital as the integrity of the answers themselves. If we are to demand accountability, transparency, and meaningful dialogue from our elected officials, we must first demand clarity and intentionality in the questions we ask. The pursuit of truth begins not with the answer, but with the courage to ask the right kind of question. Wrap up, let's look at one moment that captures everything this channel stands for: the exchange between Senator John Kennedy and judicial nominee Matthew Spencer Peterson. Kennedy asked direct, technical questions about motions in Leming, the Daubert standard, and courtroom procedures. Peterson couldn't answer. He admitted unfamiliarity, offered vague references to his FEC experience, and ultimately withdrew his nomination. If I were grading that moment, here's how it breaks down. Answering the question, Peterson struggled to respond clearly. Grade D, supporting statements. He referenced his background but failed to connect it to the questions. Grade T, taking responsibility, he acknowledged his limitations, which earns some credit. Grade B,
this isn't about shaming.
It's about standards. When public figures speak, they owe us clarity, evidence, and accountability. That's what I'll be grading, episode by episode. So if you're ready to cut through the noise and raise the bar, hit subscribe. Let's hold the mic to power and the red pen to rhetoric. Please subscribe. Episode 1 is where you and I grade Congress.